We'll start in 5 minutes. 40. I guess we start with no more people attending. No more entering. We'll start now. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining our meeting for Mid-Branch Rail and for Talent Tacoma. Tonight's event, we're going to talk about project update for the final design for the Mid-Branch Trail project. Next slide. So we're going to start a quick introduction for the project teams. I'll start myself first. My name is Samer Al-Hawamde. I'm the project manager from DDOT for this project. And go for the next one. Michael.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Albino. I'm a bicycle and pedestrian program specialist at DDOT.
I'm Yvonne Thelwell. I'm also with DDOT. I'm a supervisor engineer.
Hey, good evening. My name is Steve Zender with Stantec. We are the consultant, and I'm the project manager for the project.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Molly Burns, and I'm an IT specialist at DDOT.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Powell, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist for Ward 4. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Aguilar, and I'm the Consultant Design Engineer for the project.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for introductions. And let's go for the next slide. I will give it now to Molly to give some tutorial about how to use that platform for WebEx for answering questions and more details. Molly, go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, welcome to tonight's virtual public meeting. Thank you for joining us. To begin, we're going to review just some quick basic controls to help you participate on the platform. I do want to note that this is an open meeting, and as required by DC Code 2-578, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file will be shared on the project team's website and DDOT's YouTube channel, youtube.com/DDOT videos, within 7 days after the meeting has ended. The meeting is also being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page right now, facebook.com/DDOTDC. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions or comments in the Q&A, which we will review in the next slide. If you need any technical support during this meeting, please call 202-309-3491. So this is how to use WebEx. During the presentation, you can put in any questions or comments through the Q&A feature. We will be reviewing those questions once the presentation has finished. So to ask questions via the Q&A, if it's not already open by default, you can click the three-dot icon in the bottom right hand corner of the WebEx window and select Q&A. A new panel or window will appear, and in the Ask field, make sure All Panelists is selected. Then you can just click the text box to type your question and press the Enter key to send it. If you've joined via browser or the mobile app, all you need to do is look towards your meeting controls, and there should be a question mark icon somewhere there, and that allows you to access the Q&A. We will also be taking verbal questions, so at the conclusion of the presentation, you will have the opportunity to raise your hand, and we can unmute you so you may ask your question or share your comment. To raise your hand, just click the participants or the person icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the WebEx window. A new panel or window will appear, and then a small hand icon will appear in the bottom right of that panel. If you've joined on the mobile app, you should be able to tap your screen, and there's some sort of three-dot icon, and then there will be a raise hand icon. This will be the same for those on the browser as well. Next slide, please. I think here I'm handing it back to Samer to review the agenda.
All right. Thank you, Molly. Thank you for the tutorials. So the agendas for the presentation will be we're starting with the project background, and then we're moving to the project areas, and then to project overview and updates. And this will be focused in two sections: signalized intersections and focus areas. And then we'll move to the schedule, and then next steps. What's next step after the final design? And stakeholders coordination, and at the end we have a question session. So please, if you have any questions, please hold it to the end of the presentation, and we have a session we could answer all the questions you have in mind. If you have questions during the presentation, just take a note and wait till the end of the presentation to answer all your questions. Next slide, please. Now I'll give it to Mike Albino to talk about project background. Mike Albino.
Thank you, Samer, and thank you everyone for joining. Again, my name is Michael Alvino. I'm a bicycle and pedestrian program specialist, and I wanted to just give a little bit of background of the Metropolitan Branch Trail and why we're doing this project. So the Metropolitan Branch Trail is, one of the key elements within the district of the Capital Trail Network, and this is a, planned network of over 850 miles of trails throughout the region that we at DDOT work in partnership with our partners in around the region in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Arlington County, and others, including the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and the National Park Service, to sort of develop and implement this vision. So ultimately, the Metropolitan Branch Trail will connect to the Capitol Crescent Trail and the Anacostia River Trail, and then provide access for pedestrians and bicyclists to this greater 850-mile region-wide network. It is an important transportation route that we really see as providing a low-stress option to move throughout the city and throughout the region for pedestrians and bicyclists. Next slide, please. A little bit more specific background on the Metropolitan Branch Trail. As many of you know, if you've been following this project, it's been built in segments. The original vision for the Metropolitan Branch Trail was laid out a little over 20 years ago, and it's been built in incremental phases since then. And in addition to the section that we're going to hear about tonight from Fort Todd to Tacoma, there are several other sections that we wanted to give you an update on that are in different phases of development. Working sort of south to north, the first one that we have is the Brookland to Fort Totten section. And some of you in the neighborhood might have seen this project is currently under construction and expected to complete construction by the end of this year. So we're very excited about that, which will really create a new link with this project going towards the existing section of trail that has been built towards the south. The next section that we have is a future off-street alignment in the Manor Park area between Riggs Road and Oglethorpe Street. This was a section that was not selected during the environmental assessment that was done back in 2012 for the Metropolitan Branch Trail, and we've been working with the community and the Park Service and have future plans to conduct a new environmental assessment of the trail in this area. Coming up, the next phase that we'll be starting the development on is the Blair Road to Piney Branch section. This is in the Tacoma area. This will pick up where the project that you'll hear about tonight ends in the vicinity of Aspen Street and on the west side of the Red Line, and will continue up past the Tacoma Metro Station to Piney Branch Road. And that project is just starting. We're just starting the design. And we will be holding our first public meeting on that project next week on Tuesday, December 7th. So a week from right now, we'll be starting that process, and there'll be more information about how to join that public meeting later on in the presentation tonight. And then lastly, there's a section of trail that was constructed earlier this year along Eastern Avenue between Piney Branch Road and Baltimore Avenue, connecting to the city of Tacoma Park. That section was completed in June of this year. So if you haven't seen that, go on and check that out. Now I'll turn it back over to Samer.
Thank you, Michael. And the project, now we'll talk about the project overview for the section, which is the presentation will be about. It's Fort Totten to Tacoma section, which is the current project focuses on the Mid-Branch Trail section from Fort Totten to Tacoma neighborhood. And the trail will be including on the street section, of street sections, where we're showing this map here between first place all the way to Riggs Road will be off streets. Between from Riggs all the way to McDonald's will be on the street section, and from McDonald's along Blair Road all the way to Sandy Spring will be off street sections of the trail. And the preliminary design, it was completed in 2016, and now we started doing the final design, which is now we are at nearly at 100% to complete the design for Mitch Branch from Fort Tacoma. So next slide, please. So I'll hand now to Steve Zender, the consulting for this project, to give you more detail about the overview and updates. Steve.
Hey, thanks, Samer. Again, my name's Steve Zender, and the transportation engineer and project manager with Stantec Consulting. And our team is working to progress the final design for this project. Just want to say thanks to everybody for joining. Once again, we had a meeting back in, it was March. And also just want to say thank you to DDOT for their collaboration and their guidance on the development of this project. Before we get started, I also just want to say that we have a number of folks from our design team on the call tonight. I'll be presenting for the next 20 minutes or so here, but afterwards, if you have specific questions, we have a number of designers on the call that can answer questions related to traffic, lighting, and landscape design, whatever questions may come up. So those folks include Robert Milstead and Andrew Aguilar, who already introduced himself a little while ago. Robert's our traffic engineer, and Andrew is our project engineer. Then we also have Alan Yang from PSI on the call, and then our partner EXP is also on the call tonight. Faisal and Charicella and Oscar are all on the call, and they've been assisting with our outreach efforts and utility design on the project. Our landscape architect, Kathleen Dahill, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but I'll do the best to answer any questions related to the landscape architectural design. And if I don't know the answer, I will be certain to relay those to her, and we can follow up later. And as for the rest of us, we'll be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So if you've partaken in previous meetings, you've seen the 30% design. With the 30% design, we had finalized the alignment, determined the limits of this project. As Samer said, we're now at 100%, which is nearly complete. Our focus in the last few months has been really on finalizing project details, getting the project ready for bid, putting the contract package together, and then largely we've been involved with minimizing conflict with underground infrastructure. We're doing a lot of storm drain design on this project, so we're trying to mitigate conflicts with gas, water, and sewer. And what that means is that if we can mitigate those conflicts, we'll minimize delays during construction. So that's where our focus has been. We've also met with several adjacent property owners to discuss their concerns relating to their property frontages, and also other stakeholders in the area. So much of the following presentation will be an overview for many of you who joined in March, but we will also be providing several updates based on your feedback and other project developments. You can see on the slide here that we have a number of locations that we'll be visiting as we go through this presentation. We'll start with the signalized intersections, which are represented by the blue stars on the map. And then we will shift our attention to focus areas represented by the orange dots on the map. In general, we'll be working our way from south to north. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do a brief overview of the entire alignment on a roll map. We'll just kind of skim through. Actually, it's going to be in the middle of the presentation, but before I turn it back over to Samer, he'll go over the schedule at that point. And then all of this information will be available on the project website. I believe it already is, but if it's not, it will be shortly. Okay, so starting at the south end of the project, we'll start here at our first signal, 1st Street Northeast and Riggs Road. This is, you can see the existing, pull up my little laser pointer here. You can see the existing conditions here on the left, and then you can see the proposed conditions here on the right. The trail will approach from the east along Riggs Road, and it will be operated as a side path. And then there will be a transition across this intersection to 1st Street Northeast, where bikes will share the travel lanes and the pedestrians will use the sidewalks. The signal for this intersection was originally planned to be constructed as part of this project. However, after receiving feedback and concerns from the Washington International School and the surrounding community, DDOT decided to accelerate the schedule for construction of that signal, which is now currently under construction. And DDOT has also installed some speed humps along First Street Northeast for traffic calming. So what you see here on the right side of this slide is the ultimate condition. With the MBT project, the signal will be retrofitted with a bicycle signal in the southbound direction and some of the markings, the bike box, the conflict markings, etc. However, in the interim, the signal improvements, which are the ones that are happening right now, will include the traffic signal, pedestrian signals, marked crosswalks, and this work, I believe, is still anticipated for completion by the end of this year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Sam or Michael.
No, you're
And
correct.
these are just some, sorry, Sam, go ahead. What did you say?
No, you're fine, you're fine. You're correct.
Okay.
That's kind of correct.
These are just some current photos of the ongoing work. You can see the signal pole foundations and bases have been installed. And I think these are actually in October, so there may have been a little progress since then. But as I said, this work is planned to be completed by the end of the year. Okay, I'm going to move now to the intersection of New Hampshire, McDonald, and South Dakota. There is currently no signal at this intersection, so this project will install a new traffic signal at this intersection. You see the trail, it actually comes, here's the north arrow. So the trail, it's actually not a trail, but it's the on-street. The bicyclists are on street, and then there's also a planned segment of sidewalk that DDOT plans to construct separately under the sidewalk contract on the east and north side of South Dakota Avenue. So when all is done, pedestrians will use the sidewalk that DDOT plans to construct to connect between Madison and New Hampshire, and then cyclists will use the shared lanes. And then after crossing the intersection, pedestrians will continue to use the sidewalk, most likely on the north side of McDonald. And then cyclists will share the eastbound lane with cars on McDonald Place, and then there will be a dedicated westbound contraflow lane for cyclists heading west. And there will be no impacts to parking on McDonald. Okay, moving further north, there are 4 signalized intersections on Blair Road that will require modifications or improvements. On the map, I realize that you can only see 3 here, and that's because the signals at Kansas, North Dakota, and Peabody are very close together in the same general vicinity. At Kansas Avenue and Van Buren Road, the signalized intersections there, we are proposing that the signals will be modified to implement protected left turn phasing in the southbound direction. These signal modifications will mitigate against the risk of left turn collisions between motorists and cyclists. As a result, we anticipate that parking impacts along Blair Road southbound, or we anticipate that there will be parking impacts along Blair Road southbound immediately north of Peabody. However, it will only be 1 space, which is a decrease since our last meeting. And I'll get more into that later. And then we anticipate impacts immediately north, parking impacts immediately north of Van Buren Road, which has increased from a loss of 3 spaces to a loss of 7 spaces since our last meeting. The reason for that increase is so that we can provide enough length for a lane shift for through vehicles to bypass that southbound left turn lane. Okay, I'm going to transition to some of these focus areas that I pointed out on the map earlier. We're actually heading back down to McDonald and or I guess the segment of Blair Road between McDonald and Oglethorpe. We have the Blair Road Community Garden to the east here, and then in the existing condition, we have sidewalks on both sides of Blair Road. There's also a dirt access road that provides access to, I guess in the existing condition, which is on the left side here, there's a dirt access road that provides access to Blair Road Gardens right here. So in the proposed condition, the Metro Branch Trail will be aligned along the east side of the road, and the access road will be slightly shifted eastward, and the paving, well, the dirt road will be upgraded to a graded aggregate surface, and these two alignments will be separate, so there won't be conflict between vehicles and trail users. And also, you'll notice on the slide here that to improve access or provide safe access to the trail and the bus, there are 2 bus stops here as well. We're providing high visibility crosswalks with rapid flashing beacons and median refuge at both Oglethorpe and Nicholson. Because these will be uncontrolled crossings of a multi-lane roadway with relatively high traffic volumes. That's the reason that we're proposing the additional measures, the median refuge and the rapid flashing beacons. And then since our last meeting, we've also added some additional drainage improvements in this area to cut down on the amount of runoff, the amount of storm runoff that goes down Oglethorpe Street. And then here's just a figure here that shows the location of the rapid flashing beacons and what those look like. And these will be activated by pedestrians as they approach the crosswalks. And this is just an existing view looking south along the trail, or I guess along the existing sidewalk. And then this is a proposed rendering of what the proposed condition will look like. And moving north to the intersection of Kansas and North Dakota and Peabody, a very complicated intersection. What you're seeing here on this slide is the existing condition. Again, here's the north arrow, so the trail will be aligned along the east side of the street. Definitely the most complicated intersection on the project. There's been a lot of focus from our team and DDOT on how to best design the trail and provide a safe facility through this intersection. So I'll get a little bit more into that here on the next slide. Just think one thing I do want to point out is that the good thing about this intersection is that even in the existing condition, all legs do have marked controlled crosswalks, which will be a good feature to have for providing safe access to the trail. So in the proposed condition, you may or may not recall previously we had proposed left turns from southbound Blair Road onto Peabody and then onto Kansas. So that has changed. What we are now showing is a median refuge in this location, and then left turn movements from Blair Road directly onto Kansas. And the reason we want to do that is to provide these exclusive lefts so we can basically control the movement of vehicles across the cycle track, across the shared use trail, because we really don't want to have permissive left turn movements across the trail, especially when we have a lot of bicycle activity. And as I said previously, we were looking at sending left turns down Peabody and converting Peabody to a two-way street in the area of the intersection, but we're actually going to maintain the existing condition, which is one-way westbound based on our current approach. And there we go. Just to the reason that we want to provide those exclusive left turns in a dedicated lane is to mitigate against the situation where a driver is looking to turn left and they're only scanning for traffic ahead of them, and they might not necessarily expect a bicycle to approach. They might be aware of and looking for pedestrians, but in a few seconds, a cyclist covers a lot more ground and could appear without notice in that turning path. So that's the main reason we're trying to make these improvements at the intersection. And it does require a little bit of widening and changes to the geometry of the intersection for us to make that possible. Just moving a little bit further north, after further evaluation since the last meeting, and I mentioned this previously, but we've made the additional changes there in front of 7-Eleven to restrict left turn movements to and from the property. And in doing that, or in adding this median refuge, that creates that physical barrier to keep vehicles from coming in and out of this entrance. And then heading north from Kansas, we have several driveways that cross the trail, some with poor sight lines. So some of the things that we're trying to do to mitigate collisions between trail users and motorists at driveways is we're proposing continuous asphalt paving through the driveways so that basically the trail appears to be continuous. And this will help indicate hierarchy and that the trail users have right of way. The trail will have center line and edge line markings. We will also be using green paint to indicate conflict zones to both between trail users and drivers. And then we'll also be stenciling the pavement with slow or crossing markings and also using transverse markings or rumble strips in advance of conflict areas to sort of warn trail users of the potential conflict at driveways. And then at intersections with very limited sight lines, or really at most driveways, we're using these signs to indicate to drivers that we want them to stop in advance of the trail before pulling forward and to look in both directions. Moving further north to the intersection near Quackenboss, we have a high visibility crosswalk at this location. You may be wondering why we're not proposing rapid flashing beacons. North of Kansas, the road will narrow to 2 lanes instead of 4, so we don't have a multi-lane crossing, and the traffic volumes are lower, and then our posted speed is lower as well at 25 miles per hour. So according to FHWA and DDOT guidelines, our rapid flashing beacons are not warranted in these scenarios. Also want to point out that the frontage parking at the liquor store is in the existing condition would be in conflict with the trail design. So we are proposing to eliminate the frontage parking, which is within DDOT right of way, and compensate for that by adding we feel that the on-street parking that we're creating by narrowing the road to 1 lane will help to mitigate that loss of parking. And then just a new rendering. I don't think we had this in the last meeting. Just looking north, you can see here the existing condition. There's 2 lanes northbound, and then the proposed condition will have a single lane northbound. We'll have parallel parking, and then this is just what the trail would look like in this particular location. You can see the conflict markings. We have some flex post bollards to help discourage drivers from accidentally driving along the trail or somehow turning onto the trail. And I think the trail in this location is 12 feet wide. Moving further north to Blair Road and Rittenhouse, again, we're proposing the high visibility crosswalks, but we're also proposing the curb extensions at this intersection, which should help with traffic calming and reduce the crossing distance for folks trying to cross Blair Road. We have a few existing building awnings that we plan to resolve conflicts between the trail and those awnings prior to construction. And by resolve, I mean that those awnings would be removed and replaced with something that doesn't obstruct the trail. One of the comments we received last meeting was to improve bicycle access to the trail. So you'll notice at some of the intersections, we've added bike ramps and conflict markings across the intersection to make access for cyclists that use the travel lanes a little bit more intuitive, instead of transitioning into the sidewalk and ramp and crosswalk. So you'll see that at a few of these intersections. Here's just another rendering of the existing condition and then the proposed condition of what the area will look like as we get further north from the Kansas Avenue intersection. So you see the grass buffer, we have the parking lane, the single northbound lane, the single southbound lane, and the trail, and then some markings and things to help users, guide users along the trail. There's just another angle, look like the oblique angle. And, one more view looking north. This is at Rittenhouse again, but looking north. And there's a daycare. This awning will be eliminated prior to construction. So moving further north, we have this is the WMATA property on the right. We have several WMATA parcels that we'll be working adjacent to. Really, everything north of here is adjacent to either WMATA parcels or the railroad, the retained fill of the red line alignment. Really, the only thing to point out other than what's on the side here is that we do have several existing shrubs that will be removed. And one of the concerns expressed by WMATA was that I guess these shrubs were originally installed to cut down on headlight glare from the parking lot into the houses across the street. So to compensate for that, we'll be adding slats into the fence here to continue to cut down on that glare since the shrubs won't necessarily be there anymore. Okay, moving further north, now we get into the section Blair Road from Underwood Street to Aspen Street. In this segment, the northbound travel lane, the outside northbound travel lane, will be converted to the Metro Branch Trail. And since our last meeting, we've made several refinements to the design in this area. We've developed special designs for the barrier and the drainage in this segment. According to AASHTO, if you have a shared use path within 5 feet or closer to vehicular traffic, you want to have a barrier to protect trail users. So that's the reason for the barrier. But the barrier will be terminated intermittently as it approaches intersections or access points, specifically at Van Buren, at Whittier, and Aspen, so that folks can access the trail. The existing retaining wall that you see here is owned by WMATA, and the footing extends under the roadway. WMATA has tentatively agreed to provide a permanent easement near Whittier Street to accommodate the trail. This actually will allow us to shift the trail further from the road and provide more of a buffer. This is actually a rendering at Whittier Street, so it'll look a little bit different than this, in that there will be some space between the trail and the road in this location. And this is just a slide that shows the limits of the barrier, so from Underwood to Aspen. And this is what the barrier would look like. It'd be a concrete barrier with a 20-inch steel railing, and will actually provide a 45-inch, almost 4 feet of barrier protection to trail users. And this is the intersection at Whittier. Again, you can see, well, this slide was presented at the last meeting. I guess the things that we want to point out on this slide is that 3rd Street Northwest is currently 2-way, and we're proposing to convert it to 1-way southbound. And then you can also notice that there's some geometric changes here to help deflect traffic and therefore slow vehicles down as they make that turn onto 3rd Street. And we're also converting the parking from parallel parking to angled parking, which will result in a net gain of 3 parking spaces in this block. And then this intersection will be an all-way stop as well. And as I mentioned earlier, since the last meeting, one of the design changes we've made is to shift the trail away from the road and provide a little bit of a buffer here, and also some queuing space for bicyclists and pedestrians waiting to cross. And then also we've added the bike ramp and the conflict markings here to help provide a little bit more intuitive access for cyclists to the trail. Then one more slide before I go to the roll map. So this is at the pretty much the north end of the project. So after trail users cross under the railroad bridge at Aspen, they'll basically go for one block and then turn north and cross the road right here at Aspen and head up, or I'm sorry, at Sandy Spring. And the trail will continue up to basically the end of this block, and we'll connect with a future project and on up to Silver Spring. So I think for the most part, these improvements haven't changed and were presented at the last meeting. I guess the thing one of the things I want to point out is that this island will get bigger. We're reducing some of the there's kind of a large wide crossing distance here. So and right now this is two-way traffic on Sandy Spring. So what we're showing is that this will just be one way in this segment, and then for northbound traffic, they'll actually come around and make a left turn onto Aspen from this location. So that provides a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians and what we think is safer access to the trail. We have the curb extensions this on this corner, and yeah, pretty much covers it. So what I'm going to do is I transition for a minute here and bring up a roll map and just do a quick kind of flyover of the entire alignment, because I realize some of those slides, we just are sort of getting a snapshot of the project. But from end to end, this is the current status of the project. So we start at the very south end here. We're connecting with a previous segment of trail that's been completed and basically picking up where they've left off. We'll continue up First Place Northeast. Have a few driveways that we cross. There's an existing signal at this intersection. Oh, I guess I should point out that the Fort Totten station is down here. And so there is a lot of transit accessing this road coming in and out of this intersection. The trail users will take a left here, and we pick up here at the first signal that I started the presentation with, and then users will transition onto First Street. We'll follow First Street, which becomes South Dakota Avenue at this location. They'll cross the intersection at New Hampshire, which will have the new signal, and continue down McDonald, and then we'll pick up here at Blair Road, where McDonald meets Blair Road, and then a little bit here. We have the crossing here at Nicholson with the rapid flashing beacon. Again, here at Oglethorpe, we have bus stops at both of these locations. Continue north, we have several driveways on this segment that we weren't able to close. Basically, these properties have existing curb cuts that are, I guess, protected by regulation. This is the intersection of Kansas. Moving forward, you can see that the two lanes merge into a single lane heading northbound, and that outside travel lane is being converted to parallel parking. Here we are at Rittenhouse. You can see we've got the curb extensions here, which should help with crossing distance and traffic calming. The parallel parking continues. Here we're getting into the WMATA property. We have basically from this point forward, the roadway will be narrowed, and it's not shown here, but there will be landscaping. So it'll almost have sort of a park-like feeling through this segment, as this area will be sod and trees, planted with trees. We have crossings here at 2nd Street and Tuckerman, and the trail will continue, and at Underwood, we start to get into the segment with the retaining wall and the railroad tracks. North, this is Van Buren Road, so labeled in there. And I mentioned this earlier, but we're going to have an exclusive left turn at this intersection, which results in some loss of parking on this block. I think I said it was 7 spaces. Continuing north, we're still behind the barrier. We get to a point here where the barrier will stop. We've got at least 5 feet of buffer, so we'll have sort of more of an open trail section in here. It'll still be curb and gutter, but there won't be barrier in the vicinity of Whittier. We have the crossing here at Whittier, and then up here to Aspen, we have another signal. We have a right turn, and trail users will go under the bridge here and make the transition to Sandy Spring at this intersection of Aspen and Sandy Spring. And then this project will end at where Maple Street basically starts, and then there will be future projects to extend the trail for the rest of the alignment. So that concludes my part of the presentation, and I will give it back to Samer to discuss the schedule.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for the detailed explanation for the design and improvement along the trail. So now the schedule for this project, technically we are now, we started the project at January 2020 to start the final design at 2020. And at January 2021, 65% design we completed. And when we have the second, I think we did our public meeting and we'll be on the 65% design. And now we are here at the 100% design, which is, we're close to it, not 100 yet. So we're looking to, we're close to it to finish it. So we're here now at 100% design to complete. And before we move to construction, we have the advertisement phase, which take about 6 to 8 months. Include procurement, advertisements, and for construction. Once that phase completed, we move to the construction phase, which will be quite started. We're looking to start on summer of 2022, and we'll finish it on summer 2024. So it will be taking about 2-year construction for this project. We'll go more in details about the construction schedule and MOT, all that once we finish the advertisement and procurement phase. We'll have another meeting. We'll give you a construction meeting. We'll talk about detail about schedule, how we're going to start, which phase we're starting, which section of the project we start. So all this information we'll talk about in the construction phase. So now, once we finish the 100% design, we move it. We're still working on to move it to construction, which is the advertisement and procurement. So will be that. This phase will be 6 months to 8 months process to move it to construction. Next slide, please. So next step. So we're looking to hear comments from you, any question from any of the audience. If you have, if you have a question, you could answer. You could bring up if you think you have more questions. We'd like to have your other question no later than December 14th, 2021. And you can send your comment by the project email, which is midbranchtrail@dc.gov, or you can send it to me through my email or my phone number as well. And also the material we present today, also the road plans, will have them on the project website, that's a link here. If you want to get the link, that's a link. Get all the information, even brief simple information and detailed information will find them on this link. So Michael, do you want to talk about this section down here? You get to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Samer. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there will be another public meeting a week from today for the next phase of the Met Branch Trail in the Tacoma area, which we're calling Blair Road to Piney Branch Road. And so the link is there. You can find more information about this on our website, metbranchtrail.com. And so that will be really the first meeting. Whereas here we're talking about the 100% design, there will be very much at the beginning talking about different concepts and alternatives. So we look forward to seeing some of you at that meeting.
Thank you, Michael. So here we just keep the list of the stakeholder we coordinate with during the project, which is we did like Federal Highway Administration, National Park, Mayor Office, Western, WMATA, all these coordination we did during the project. We use the system here to make sure we have them in the list here. I think, next slide, please. So I'll kick it now to Molly if you want to talk about this idea.
Yes, thank you. So this slide is reviewing the Title VI form. As a recipient of federal assistance, DDOT must ensure that all of its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. The Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire is used to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with Title VI. Project comments and/or concerns may also be submitted through this form. We appreciate anyone who is willing to complete the form, and we thank you for your participation. You can scan the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide if you have your mobile phone handy. I'll drop the link in the chat as well. And at the conclusion of this meeting, if you've joined us on your computer or laptop, you will be redirected to the Title VI form in a new tab on your browser. Next slide, please. And I'll just re-review how to use WebEx real quick for those of you if you joined late and missed the beginning. To ask questions through the Q&A, you can click the three-dot icon in the bottom right corner and select Q&A. And from there, a new panel or window will appear, and in the Ask field, select All Panelists. Just click the text box to type your question and press the Enter key to send it. And if you're on the browser or the mobile app, there should be a question mark icon that you can tap and or click, and you access the Q&A that way. If you'd like to raise your hand, and a reminder that we are recording, so if you do want to voice your question or comment, you will be recorded and live streamed on Facebook. Just go to the participants or person icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the WebEx window. A new panel or window will appear, and you just click the little raise hand icon. For those on the browser or mobile app, just tap the three-dot icon, and there should be a raise hand option. And now we will begin the question and answer portion of the presentation. And I know there are quite a few questions already in the Q&A.
I see one, I think Michael answered that question. Is there any timeline for the Fort Houghton Appointable segment? There is not a timeline for the Fort Houghton to Appointable segments at this point. Next question, Matthew, Stephen, do the on-street section of this part have a protected bike lane? No, it's not going to be. It will be like a share path with the motorists. So that section will be shared with bicyclists with motorists. So it will be shared paths. Now protected bike lane. Any more questions? Let me see what oh my God.
Yes, Sammer, there's a question. The traffic light that will be installed at First and Riggs that will be operational, will that include, will it be fully up and running? I guess when the construction is complete is the question.
For the interim signal?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The next question is DC Bilingual, not Washington Interschool. Okay. For the next phase, will DDOT construct a bridge over Riggs Road to MPS area? It's all New Year long.
I can answer this question.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Remember?
Sure.
Yeah, this refers to the future phase in the Manor Park environmental assessment. And so that next phase will be an environmental assessment. So there will be an opportunity, for the public to sort of weigh in on what alternatives get scoped. And that is certainly one that has been considered and proposed in terms of the alternatives to be looked at in that area.
So for the next question is for this phase, many of us are delighted that the design is nearly 100% done and eager for it to be completed and construction to begin. Certainly, the design will never be perfect in anyone's eyes, but progress required compromised. I could likely continue with design suggestion and critics until the outcome home. My experience is that the data and consulting professionals have already about every one of my suggestions perfectly. Good go slide. Let's get on it and how I can help. This question, I would say, like it's all process. We have to follow the process till we move to construction. So, like I mentioned earlier, it's a process. We have to move between design, procurement, which is that section, that procurement will be obligate the money, the fund for the project, also advertising and bid opening. So that will have to be completed. And normally, that project, 85% of the fund is federal funded, and 20% of it it's DC government fund. So we have to, once we close the project for 100% design, we have to send the whole package to the feds for review, and this takes at least 2 or 3 months at least for the review once they get it back, and then we start process the advertisement. So that's why we need that process between the design and construction. And is it possible to install a pole in the middle of the trail or something that prevent cars from entering at the entrance adjacent to the gravel, the driveway in the Blair Community Garden? That one we could take this comment and we could look into it in internet, like with the design team, see if we could add that. I love this project. I can tell from this presentation that the people working on it are world-class professional. My only complaint is the pace of the completion. How do we speed the project up? Like I said, I answered the question before. It's similar. It's process, and we have to go by each phase, because we did that. We have 3 phases: design phase, procurement phase, and construction phase. And 3 phases that have to do need time to be completed for each phase. Car zoom down Blair there, even with toll barrier, it feels dangerous. Can we slow car down there? I'm not sure what this question exactly. Car down.
Hey, Summer, I think I can
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
weigh in on this question. Yeah, for the speeding on Blair, one of the issues that leads to the speeding on Blair is the, at least in the northbound direction, the 2 lanes. So through the project, those 2 lanes, will be eliminated, reduced down to 1 lane. And so one of the, particularly one of the factors in a lot of the crashes that happen on Blair Road is this weaving effect, where cars are sort of weaving in and out of those 2 lanes. With just the 1 lane and then the hard barrier on the other side, we expect that behavior will be significantly reduced. And, in addition to that, then, the lanes for cars will be narrowed. And so between those 2 things, we do think that traffic speeds will be reduced as a result of this project.
Near Whittier, different direction from angled parking to a street. So you talk about the 3rd Street, I guess, Luis?
Yes. Steve, can you maybe bring up the
Yes, can we just look?
the slide that shows 3rd and Whittier again?
Sure. Give me 1 second. I think the question there, it's back in angle parking. Why it's facing away from the arrow. Or I think somebody's vacuuming outside of my office. But that's not too noisy.
But just to reiterate what Steve just said, is that on 3rd Street, which between Whittier and Blair would be converted from 2-way to 1-way southbound, so the direction of travel for cars would be from Blair towards Whittier, and there would be back-in angle parking on the east side of the street.
The next question is left turn from Aspen into Blair. Is it Charnock bottleneck for cars going straight on Aspen? Is this being addressed? That's where we talk about modify the signal at Aspen Street will be that part of modification, but I'm not sure we can go in detail about the signal there. Steve, can you just give detail about the signal, or Robert, can you give us more detail about the signal at Aspen and the road?
Sorry, which question are we on? When I go to share, all the questions go
Okay.
away.
As you talk about the lifting coming from Aspen to Blair,
Uh,
so do you know what's the improvement we did there at that intersection, Aspen with Blair?
There's been no change to the
Timing.
thing along Aspen. Or adding a left turn lane either.
It will be the minor road, which is Aspen coming to Blair, will be not changing. It will be the same as before. Changing that.
I can just add, that was something that was looked at in the preliminary design. And it wasn't, ultimately pursued as, the purpose of this project, and the focus is really on the trail and improving the connections for bicyclists and pedestrians. But that was a comment that we've heard, and the existing condition won't be made any worse than it is by the trail. But this project is not about improving or increasing the throughput for cars going on westbound Aspen.
The next question is, can you confirm that the driveways marks at storage facility, liquor store, etc., will tell the driver to look for bikes, pedestrian, rather than telling a trail user to look out for drivers? So we'll probably have more signage. We have more signage like to direct like pedestrians and bicyclists. And also, if you look, one of the rendering, we're showing some like ball on the trail. So that's, can you show that, Steve? You might show one of the rendering showing that. Can you show?
Yeah, I can confirm that we are putting signs, and basically that stop here sign and the look both directions will be installed at those driveways.
And just to be specific to the question, the orientation of those signs will be, for the drivers to look to see the pedestrians and bicyclists on the trail.
Yeah, and there will also be intermittent signing indicating to drivers to look, right turning drivers from Blair Road to look or stop for bikes and pets.
The next one is there a coordination between WMATA and DC Black for the work in the same streets? Definitely, we have. We'll defer this to DC Black team to look to see the coordination with WMATA, but I'm not aware of that. I'll go back and look for that question. Give an answer for that question. So can you keep that question, John? Give an answer later. Either could avoid all the conflict zones in. Yeah, Mike.
Tamara, I was just having a hard time hearing you on that last question about the DC plug coordination.
Yeah, I think there is some work on DC plug with WMATA, so maybe it's a question outside the project limit. So we need to just reach out to DC plug and see if they have put in it with WMATA. It's outside the project scope. Work. But it's a coordination between WMATA and DC plug. Sorry, I'm kind of sick. I'm losing my voice. Sorry about that. So yeah, that question will be answered by DC Black. I'll defer the question to DC Black team within DDA. So we'll get back to Lewis. We'll get back to you on this answer. DDA could avoid all the conflict zones in front of the business on Blair Road by aligning the MBT on the avenue. Did DDA seriously consider this? If so, why was not selected?
Yeah, I can answer that question.
Yeah,
Yeah, we looked at that pretty extensively in the planning phase, in both the environmental assessment and the preliminary design. And there would have been substantially, different and greater impacts to an alignment along North Dakota Avenue for a couple reasons. There's some information about this on our website, which I can share. But there would have been a greater impact on the number of parking spaces on North Dakota Avenue, which would have directed back towards 3rd Street, which is a more residential part of the alignment, and it's sort of less direct than the original intention of the Metropolitan Branch Trail was really to follow the alignment of the railroad and provide this direct route for bicyclists and pedestrians that followed that former rail line. So those were a couple of the reasons that we cited, and I'll put a link to the response from the preliminary design in 2016 when we had a couple of meetings with the ANC and with the community that looked at an alignment on North Dakota Avenue in response to that.
There is a reason why Underwood does not have a crosswalk connections. Can you show Steve, can you show the presentation while we see the questions after the questions?
Yeah, I don't have a slide on that one, but I have the plans. I can open the plans and share what I
Just
have.
make sure why we didn't have it. Double check.
Or I guess I could also show the roll map. But yeah, so this intersection, yeah, the reason we don't have a crosswalk here is because we have a segment of barrier. Now, if we wanted to put a crossing here, we'd have to put a break in the barrier and there, put what I describe as an uncontrolled crosswalk. There's no stop sign. There's no signal. Now we have those on the project. We like to limit them if we can. There's just a couple of things though, specifically about this intersection that where we'd prefer not to have a crossing. There's really no queuing space between the trail and the road. So what would end up happening is that people would stand, and I'm sorry, you still can't see my screen. So what would happen is we would have people standing in the trail waiting to cross the street, and the trail's only 10 feet wide here. We also don't have great sight lines coming down the road here. There's a little bit of a hill, there's some curvature. So as a driver, you don't necessarily, if you can imagine, like you're right here and your sight line is coming across, there might be some parked vehicles here and somebody is waiting to cross. Now we could put some curb extensions here, but then that gets into more drainage improvements. So it just wasn't an ideal candidate intersection for crossings. So we do have on the next, excuse my markups, but you can see we do have the crossing that is signalized and controlled at the intersection of Van Buren and Blair. So we would be asking people accessing the trail, but this is a safer access point, and so we're encouraging people to use this intersection to get on and off the trail. Hopefully that answers the question.
For the next phase, we'll construct a bridge over Riggs Road to the MPS area as Paul Mayer Long. Okay, do you want to answer, Michael?
I'm sorry, I was reading some of the questions and I missed the.
Okay. For the next phase, we'll construct a bridge over Riggs Road to the NPS area as Paul Mayer.
Okay, yeah, this question was answered earlier, and the answer is yes, it's possible to look at that.
Will you be able to make a changes as at Riggs and First Place Northeast, where previous plans showed a utility pole in the middle of the path at the end of the steep downhill and corner? It's that one, I think the one where the signal is. A couple. I think that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think this is at the corner.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
First Place and Riggs.
That's the one in the, yeah. I think then we relocate that pole. We plan to
No,
relocate it.
this pole remains. We still have a number of constraints on this corner. We have right-of-way constraints, and we have the pole. We would still need a pole there regardless, because there's a signal. So there's a utility pole and there's a traffic signal on that utility pole. So there's really no easy way to eliminate that. But Andrew, you want to say something?
Yeah, but I just want to add that previously the pole was more so centered in the middle of the trail, but we did adjust the back of the trail slightly to create that space to get past it. I think we have about 8 or 10 feet behind the pole.
So we're talking about this pole, and these guy wires will be adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah, so you see how we slightly realigned that curve at the back of the sidewalk.
Okay, the next question is the intersection of Clare Road, Kansas Peabody is complicated and dangerous. Why not redo this intersection as a part of the MBT project? MBT project, it's under different budget. It's under the trail budget, and intersection we just add this improvement as part of improvement along the trail. This intersection will become under different budget. We'll look into it as a separate project. So we'll let to evaluate the intersection and look if we could improve it in a way to reduce the dangerous of the intersection. But as a mid branch, will be under like different budget as the intersection.
Sammer, we actually have a few raised hands if we would like to switch it up. And go over.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Each
So
person.
thank you for your patience. I do want to remind folks, if you dialed in directly, you may dial *3 if you would like to raise your hand. But Sam, we are unmuting you now. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Sengoti Bengoa. I reside at 1st Street Northeast, right where the trail is going to be going on road, and where there might be a future environmental assessment for the several blocks before we get into the section of Blair Road. I first want to commend everybody for their effort with the Met Branch Trail, in particular for the section that's being completed up to Fort Totten. That's been a long time coming, so it's good to see that that's near completion. I do have some concerns about the proposal moving north through my neighborhood, specifically on 1st Street Northeast in front of the school. As many people know, the Met Branch Trail is used during rush hours for a lot of people getting into the city, a lot of commuters. So my concern is that during that prime time, both in the morning and in the evening, when folks are dropping off their kids, there is very heavy use of 1st Street Northeast. And the proposal right now has the trail going on road, combating that traffic at that prime time. I think it really poses a huge safety concern. I'd like to hear what thought has been given to potentially mediate some of that concern, because I think that maybe you're not really understanding how heavy that traffic is and how contentious people are driving down that road to park, and just adding bicycles to that mix is a concern. And again, I'm saying that as an advocate of the trail. Second, my wife has a lot of concern about the traffic that's going to be impacted going north when one lane is going to be removed. I understand the need for the trail, but we want to get a better understanding of what kind of a study has been done and what kind of an impact that's going to have on the traffic. And adding to her point, the way that you have the merge from 2 lanes to 1 lane right after that massive intersection. Originally I thought that was going to be a little bit later, and it kind of made sense to me. But right now, the way that you have it designed seems to be very close to that huge intersection at Kansas. I think that's just going to be a bottleneck, and I think it's going to create a lot of congestion northbound again. Yeah, and again, during the prime rush hours in particular, when a lot of people are dropping off kids and the like. Could you just comment on those 2 main points, please? Thanks.
The first question you asked about the intersection at Riggs and First Street, that's why we adding that signal at the intersection to moderate traffic. So that's one of the improvements we're doing at the intersection. You just answer your question. And the second question, we did the study along Blair Road about the reason we eliminate 1 lane to 2 lane to 1 lane just to reduce the speed, because we have a lot who doesn't follow the speed limit along Blair Road, which is more like a safety concern. That's the reason we took 1 lane out of Blair Road to become only one lane. And for the merging, it's the reason we do the merging because we need to try to provide more parking space along the road for businesses distributing the trail. So the best way is to add more parking spaces along the street. Hope I answer all your questions.
Samara, I can just add a little bit onto that as well.
Okay.
I think for the first question, on First Street Northeast, we've certainly heard this comment, and we've been trying to address the traffic on First Street. I don't want to say separately, because I do think we're taking the trail into consideration, but the existing concerns about sort of cut through traffic and heavy volumes on First Street, during rush hour, is part of the reason that we've accelerated the installation of those speed humps on First Street as well as the traffic signal. And we also hope that people are going to the school by bike in the future, a lot more of them. So that is something, the 2 signals and slowing down the traffic with the speed humps is something that we think will have an impact there. For the second question about the lane reduction on Blair Road, we did do an extensive traffic study that is based on the existing traffic levels and then the proposed sort of future condition, which is based on planned growth and through the zoning process and changes in demographics regionally. And that information is all on our website, and I can put that in the chat as well. But that process looks at what is the impact of a reduction of a lane on Blair Road? What does it do to the greater transportation network? What are the sort of the spillover impacts? And what that analysis found was that the impacts really are relatively minimal, and they fall within sort of accepted levels of tolerance that we have. So I'm happy to share that information. We do think, in addition to the safety benefits, it will have a lot of just general benefits for the community. Removing.
Thanks, Michael. And actually, thank you for working with us. You've been on this project for a long time, so I appreciate your longevity and your understanding of our concern. I don't think that you're really taking into account that DC Bilingual is currently in the process of doubling their enrollment. And what that's going to do to the traffic on First Street. I really, I hear what you're saying with the traffic light and the few speed bumps. But unfortunately, I really don't think that you guys are really seriously taking into account what a risk this is going to be during rush hour. Anyway, my comment's been made. I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
So the next raised hand is Garrett. We are unmuting you now.
Good evening. My name is Garrett Hennigan. I'm with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association. Have been following this project for quite a while. And thanks for giving this update tonight. I should say, before I get into it, just a few questions. You've answered quite a few of them already. Just wanted to show some appreciation based on a lot of the comments that we've put in. You know, really love to see the extensive Blair Road traffic calming, you know, with the full-time parking, dealing with those awnings before the trail moves in for you know, less people popping out of doors and not seeing trail users. Really appreciate the sort of trail priority through at driveway crossings with design, and the rapid flashing beacons at the ped refuges. I wanted to ask a few questions, and also thank you for clarifying on the utility pole at the bottom of the hill at Riggs in First Place. I suppose we can't move everything, but scooting it out of the way, I think, is a really good change. So thank you for that. So an issue that Michael, you'll probably remember from going way back, the trail crosses Aspen Street at Sandy Spring, and that's sort of one of the main trunk lines and an access point to get further into Tacoma Park. Did you all investigate? I know that Aspen is a collector road. Did you all investigate something like a raised crosswalk at that point to again give more priority to the trail, and give a little more deference to trail users so that they're not, you know, having to wade out into the Aspen Street traffic? That's question number one. Question number two is, I know that the intersection is rather complicated, but at Blair in Kansas, was any further consideration given to filling the gap in the Kansas Avenue bike lanes, which continue on sort of a quarter mile gap on either side, but would be a really important connection to the Met Branch? That's question number two. And I suppose, yeah, on First Street, the on-street segment, I know we just discussed this. Are there any other traffic calming changes proposed aside from the traffic signal, which will give some order, the speed humps? Has the speed limit been reduced there? You know, can we look at bulb outs or even a mini roundabout at the intersection there? I think that as an on-street section with a lot of the reported speeding and sort of aggressive driving is definitely a concern. I'll leave it there. Those three questions. Thank you.
Hey, Garrett, I'll try to capture those questions in order. The first one was Aspen and Sandy Spring. The second was
Kansas Ave bike lane extension.
Oh, Kansas.
Yeah, on Kansas. And the third one was First Street traffic calming. Thanks.
Yeah, and maybe Steve or Andrew can jump in about the raised crosswalk on Aspen Street. I don't think it was something that it's not something that's been included in the final design.
Can we jump in now?
Which one?
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, so we have, Garrett, thanks for your comment. And we do recognize this is like a main trail stem crossing of a, you know, fairly busy street. So we're actually just talking about this today. We've already ruled out a stop sign. We're just too close to the intersection at Blair to be able to put a stop sign here. We will be putting stop signs for trail users. We haven't looked at a raised crosswalk. I mean, I would certainly be open to that. But you know, we'd have to discuss that and look at it a little more closely with DDOT. So.
And as far as the second question goes on Kansas Avenue, that is something that we've looked at. It is something that is moving on a separate track from the trail project, but there is a project to look at closing that gap in the bike lanes on Kansas Avenue that DDOT is working on. And then, the last question about First Street, those, the speed humps and the traffic signals, you're right to say, those are what's been included. We're not at this time proposing sort of mini traffic circles or roundabouts or diverters on First Street, but that is something that, could be looked at in the future.
I'll just say thanks for the straightforward answers. I guess we'll be continuing to encourage you all to consider more aggressive traffic calming there, because I know that's been a complaint and a concern for the neighborhood for decades, and certainly adding more trail users will only sort of exacerbate that. I had one more very quick question. I know that next week's discussion about extending the trail further north is next week, but do you have a sense of where the likely tie-in points of the extension further north will be? Is it at Blair and Aspen, Blair at Whittier? Just to get a sense, to make sure that that is a really intuitive extension further north?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there will be much more detail on that at the meeting next week. But the short answer is that, right now, all those options are on the table. So we'll be looking at Whittier Street, Van Buren Street, and Aspen Street as sort of potential connections going further north. And I think that's a little bit an example of the difference in the project that is starting next week, which is really at the concept phase, versus this one, which is at what we call the final design phase, where we're moving toward construction on this. So stay tuned for more information on that, and we hope to see you at the meeting next week.
Will do. Thanks so much.
All right, we just have a few more raised hands. Joe, I believe you were next. We are unmuting you now.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Church. I just want to say thanks so much for all your work on this. I'm a cyclist, and I'm very excited to see this section of the trail get completed. I live at 6625 3rd Street at the corner of Whittier and Blair and 3rd. I'm wondering if you might be able to pull that slide up.
Here, give me 1 second. Yep.
All right, great, thank you. So I've met with a few of you about this, Samer and Yvonne.
Amber.
And I just have a couple questions about this. There's a new sidewalk proposed right where I have a fence to my yard. My house is the one on the left there. And my fence is 8 feet from the curb. It looks like a 6-foot sidewalk with a 4-foot tree box is being proposed. I'm wondering why we couldn't do a 2-foot tree box there, which would match what's on Blair Road and these other sidewalks in the area. That would, save me a lot of heartache about having to move my fence. I'm not sure what anyone gains from that.
I think when we discuss it, we decide to do like 4 feet buffer and a 6 feet sidewalk. This was the final. Remember that Yvonne, you were only mentioning.
That's what we discussed in person. I'm just wondering if anyone can give me a little more insight why. I mean, looking at this, that would be the widest tree box on this picture. Why we couldn't just do a 2-foot.
Hey, I can add a little bit of a response to that. Is that's really our standard in the district. The 4-foot tree box. And to that point, almost all the pedestrian facilities in this area along Blair Road are substandard to begin with. So if we're going to rebuild something new, we want it to at least meet our minimum standards. you know, and that's for pedestrian safety, but also, you know, for, you know, just for their general, you know, comfort on the street is having that 4-foot standard tree box, as well as, you know, for the benefit of you know, it gives us the opportunity to plant trees there as well.
I think urban forestry also made a comment earlier in the design that they really can't maintain anything that's less than 3 feet. And so, which would be the reason for the wider tree box. I mean, generally for trees, you know, you have to have a certain amount of soil volume. We wouldn't typically plant any trees in a 2-foot wide buffer.
Sure. Well, it's a major cause of concern for me and my partner. We're talking about like a 20-foot length of tree box. If you look at every other tree box in this photo, they're 2 feet wide. I wish you all could be a little more accommodating with that, because it means I have to move my fence and tear up 2 feet of my driveway. So.
Can you still look into that and see what we can do for that? Since I see what we can do.
Right. Thanks for your consideration.
No problem. Thank you. Do you have any more questions? Someone raising hands to answer any more questions.
Yes, we have one more raised hand. Jeff, I am unmuting you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for doing this meeting, taking questions. I have a few different questions that I think will all be quick, if you don't mind. One, on the current slide here, where you are showing bumping out for the change on 3rd Street at Blair, is that going to be new green space where it bumps out?
You're talking about down here?
No, the one on well,
Where 3rd hits Blair.
with the word
Oh,
Blair.
down here.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have the landscape plans in front of me, but yeah, it will be at a minimum sod and potentially some trees planted in there as well. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, great.
Andrew, do you have a sense of what's proposed in there?
I think you're on. I think what you're saying is correct. I think it'll be sod, grass, and potentially trees. I kind of think that we're not proposing new trees there, but I do think that it's going to be the grass.
The pavement will be removed for sure. You know, this is just sort of a sketch, or it's not a complete depiction of all the improvements. Yeah, will be at a minimum grass and potentially some landscape plantings as well.
Okay, great. Then moving north, I think my other questions are around the Blair Aspen intersection. And one of the concerns that I've heard from a neighbor is about around the potential for bicycle and pedestrian conflicts, where bicycles will be traveling north and turning potentially quickly. And so I'm curious what your perspective is on that, if there's anything that's done to make it safe for the pedestrians that are maybe waiting, walking to the light, to that intersection. It's not really clear from me on this image, so I'm just curious what you guys do to make that as safe as possible for the pedestrians who are also waiting there in a very limited visibility sort of potentially situation.
Yeah, so you're talking about this corner right here?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do have some limitations created by the structure, the railroad structure. So we will be putting in you know, markings and signing, and we're trying to make. Previously, this was a little tighter. We've tried to expand just provide as much space in here as we can, to provide space to maneuver. But you know, we're proposing signing and marking essentially. There's also going to be signal poles in the area, which I mean that's not usually the go-to when it comes to traffic, you know, or trying to calm traffic. But you know, we hope that users will just use good sense in this area, and we can provide signing and all the signing and marking in the world. But if people are going to be reckless, those are sometimes out of our control.
Okay, and does the, I'm sorry if I missed this, is the lighting going to be improved under the underpass there? So
Yeah, there will be lighting under the underpass, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. They'll be on actual poles under the underpass.
Okay, great. And then when you get into construction here, we have like hundreds of kids crossing this street every day right now, and it's not real safe for them to cross Blair Road. Is there anything that can be done in the construction process to prioritize the improvements here so that we're not waiting until 2024? Like or is it too early to answer that question?
I think it's certainly a consideration that DDOT's, you know, on many projects I've worked on. I mean, this one is a great example. I mean, it's accelerated the construction of the signal down at the DC Bilingual School, and I apologize. Earlier I referred to it as the Washington International School, so I would say, yeah. I mean, put that comment in writing, and it could probably be phased that way.
Okay, we'll do, and yeah, it's really needed as soon as we can get that. That's great. My last question.
Sam or Michael, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sorry.
You go ahead, Sam.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from my experience working at DDOT, this question sort of comes up in a lot of projects where, an improvement is badly needed and you want to expedite it at one end of a project or another. And, this one's almost about 2 miles long. I think we expect the construction to take 24 months based on, what Samra was saying earlier. So it's just a little difficult for us, once we advertise a project for construction, to sort of, peel back the curtain on the process a little bit, we'll select a construction contractor and then they'll put together a schedule, based on their expertise and their staffing. And we'll have some say in that. We can kind of encourage them to start at one place or another or prioritize a certain thing, but there's just so many different factors, and inevitably, if we want to prioritize one area, that there might be some other folks who want us to prioritize another area. So that is something that we will sort of get into discussions on in construction. As Samra mentioned earlier, when we do award the construction contract, we'll have we typically come back to the public and hold a pre-construction meeting and sort of let them know, here's what our schedule is, get a little bit more into the weeds of, here are what the detours are going to be. As you mentioned, if you have concerns about what it's section when the construction itself is happening, rather than what it's going to look like when it's done, that's really a good time to sort of weigh in with those questions. Samra, if you want to add to that.
I was going to add about the contractors. We're like, during the construction phase, most of our contractors now, they work with the communities, like they work closely and make sure the best, safest path they could use. Even like if they're closing ramps or like sidewalk, they provide access for their safety. So, and also like our staff, DDOT staff will be on site to control this like incident and make sure everyone like it's in a safe like crossing or area. So just, yeah, that's what I'm gonna mention, that's all.
Great. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you very much. My last question is just as we round up here onto Sandy Spring, I'm just curious, and I'm sorry if I missed this already, but will the trail result in the loss of all the pine trees that are currently along Sandy Spring there?
There are several tree impacts along there, yes.
Okay. And,
Yes, but it's not all of them though. It won't be all of them.
okay. And then will there be a planting to replace some of the ones that come down to put them in a position that works, or does it eliminate the possibility?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that the trees are impacted is because we're impacting the root zones. So even though they might not die immediately, they probably would die in time. So it's more of a proactive thing, just removing trees where we're impacting, a substantial part of the root zone. And I believe, again, that I don't have the landscape plan in front of me, but I believe, yes, that we are replacing trees in that along that stretch.
Yep, I'm looking at the plan. We are. A couple of them we are.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Cool. Good to know. Well, those are my questions. Thanks so much, all of you, for the time.
And also just to clear up your question with regards to at Aspen and Blair, that area between the roadway and the sidewalk, that is going to be grass. Just to give you a final definite answer for that part.
You're talking about Third and Blair?
Just like up and to the left of your view, right there, Blair, and between Third and Aspen.
The space?
Yep, that space. Yeah, that's going to be a grass space. Yep, it's going to be grass between the sidewalk and the roadway.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have 2 more raised hands. I do want to note that we will be ending at 8:30, so that's about 18 minutes away. Faith, I'm unmuting you now. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks. A couple of questions. Thanks. First of all, thanks for doing this. It's great to see Michael there again, having worked with him for quite a while on this. I guess one question that I haven't written up in on the chat section is been basically covered by Garrett. And I'll just sort of re-voice a concern that I've voiced a number of times before, and that's one that's shared, obviously. How do you get through the Blair, 4th Blair and Cedar intersection, and what do you do? Are you going to actually continue on up Sandy Spring as is now proposed, which would take you up to Maple Street, which is incredibly congested already? Just to put that concern again out to you folks. You've and Michael certainly heard it before. Garrett has as well, and others on the chat. The other 2 questions, I might as well just raise them. They're very quick. South of Whittier Street on 3rd, will that be a continuation of the one-way section that will be one-way south between Blair and Whittier? That's one simple question, I think. And let's see, the other one I just put on, what was it? Let me just see, what did I do? Okay, now where'd it go? Okay, yeah, one thing that actually I am concerned about, because I do use this intersection quite frequently, Whittier Street and Blair. It's tough right through there. It's tough turning on to Blair from Whittier Street. And I'm wondering, I don't see it on this map. Maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but I'm wondering about making that a right turn only south onto Blair when you're coming from Whittier, coming east, of course, to Blair, and making that particular Whittier-Blair intersection a right turn only onto Blair. And maybe northbound on Blair, that might be, I don't know, that's maybe a not allowing a left-hand turn onto Whittier there. Anyway, it's a fuzzy intersection and I do use it pretty often and I find it just difficult and seems a bit dangerous. So I'm thinking about ways to simplify it, making it safer. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Faith, and good to see you again. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, thank you.
Just for the first question, the one-way of 3rd Street is only proposed between Whittier and Blair, so it would not extend south of Whittier.
Great.
And then for this intersection of Whittier and Blair, I think we're not proposing to make it a right turn only off of Whittier, because by making 3rd Street one-way southbound, right now we've eliminated sort of the opportunity for people to make that left off of 3rd.
Yeah.
Right now, people are making a left both from Whittier Street onto Blair and from 3rd Street onto Blair. And from 3rd onto Blair is the one that we think is really problematic.
Sure.
But yeah, that's not something we're proposing right now.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess that addressed the other question about the transition onto Maple. So this property is actually being redeveloped. Not sure what the status is, if that started. I haven't been on this block recently, but there will be a transition similarly to the way 1st Street Northeast is. The cyclists will transition onto the road. Pedestrians will be able to use the sidewalk. I think that this development will provide a continuous sidewalk. So yeah, I mean, and I think we recognize it's not ideal, but that's why Michael has a project in the pipeline to extend the trail northbound. So in the interim, it's just going to be somewhat of a compromise, I suppose.
May I comment?
Sorry?
May I comment on that? The concern particularly is when you get to Carroll. Carroll Street is very, very congested. And to answer your question about the Vine Street Maple construction that's underway and the building is going up, but that's the concern for me in terms of traffic, in terms of how in the world to weave a bike lane through Carroll Street. I don't know, I really don't see it. Busboys and Poets is right there, that whole commercial development, and CVS is there on the other side, but you'd have to turn, I guess you'd have to turn left onto Carroll, because going straight onto Maple, then you're in Maryland. And you have chosen the west route around the metro station. So at that Maple Street, Carroll Street intersection, I'm imagining that we would want to turn left, or that is westward on Carroll Street, which is a very, very already difficult and congested area. Anyway, it's a concern that you guys know about, I think, or have been thinking about, but I urge you to really think about that more and consider the other routes that Garrett was talking about and Michael was commenting on.
Yeah, and for those of you who might have missed it at the beginning of the meeting, there will be a meeting next Tuesday night at this time to talk about that sort of connection on the west side of the metro through Tacoma, which we're calling Blair Road to Piney Branch, frankly for a lot of those same reasons that you just brought up, Faith. So more information and more discussion and decisions to be made on that through that project.
Thanks.
All right, so we have one last raised hand. I do want to note, all of the questions that have been asked in the Q&A will be saved and shared with the project team, who will work on a frequently asked questions document to address any outstanding questions. But moving on, Nick, I'm unmuting you. Fair warning, we have 10 minutes left scheduled for this meeting.
But I appreciate the warning. I have but one question, and I will certainly beat that 10-minute marker. But first, a compliment to all of you. I think extensions and expansions and projects that have been discussed tonight are meaningful for a lot of people, especially in wards 4, 5, and 6. Frankly, for me personally, this is the type of stuff that will frankly directly lead to me converting some car trips to bike trips, especially as I go northward from Edgewood. But you know, Michael, if you haven't guessed my question yet about Edgewood, as you know, south of this segment on the trail, there's a half-mile portion of the MBT along 8th Street where DDOT has recently, to use a euphemism, paused a plan to protect the MBT along this stretch. Is there any update on the status there, next steps, or the timeline for the 8th Street portion of the MBT just south of this expansion?
Nothing specific that I can share, just that, you know, we plan to come back to the ANC and the community in the spring of 2022 with, you know, some more options and recommendations for that stretch of 8th Street.
I appreciate that, and that's great to hear. Thank you, Michael, and everybody else.
There's like 8 minutes, and if you wanna any more questions.
Actually, we do have one raised hand that just came up. If we would like to address that, Tony, I will unmute you.
Thank you. I will quickly get my question out, but I do want to say thank you to everybody that's involved in this project. It's good to see it's moving forward in a positive way. I asked a couple of questions in the chat, and I think one of them got answered, maybe two. So thank you for that. But one thing I want to ask about, Mike, you had mentioned that that the alignment of North Dakota Avenue is not chosen in part due to the loss of parking there. And I guess the question I've got is, what is the intent of this project? Is the intent of this project, the overall intent, is it to provide a safe and low stress trail for users, or is it to be focused more on fast and efficient use by trail users?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a number of things. You know, we certainly hope that it's to provide a safe and low stress route for, you know, users of all ages and all abilities. And to us, you know, that's kids, you know, older adults, pedestrians, and, you know, to really provide a safe and separate space where they can, you know, either recreate or use transportation, you know, in a safe and low stress manner.
Thank you for that. I mean, then I'm just going to make a comment and I'll be done, which is I really feel like you all are trying to do too much with this project, in the sense that the traffic, you're using this trail as a way to do traffic calming in Blair and to decrease the lane, you know, to put Blair Road on a road diet and so forth. And I appreciate all of that. I think those are wonderful ideas. But if the goal of this trail is to provide a safe and low stress environment, I don't think this design does that. I think this design is very stressful for the following reasons. You're going to have cyclists and runners who are going to have to navigate conflict zones with a liquor store, with a daycare center. Think of how many people are going back and forth to pick up their kids at a daycare at a place that is pretty much accessible only by car. You know, not to mention the impacts to those businesses that the trail is going to cause. So I really think that I think that the alignment chosen fails if the goal of the overall intent of this project is safe and low stress for users. Then I think the alignment design fails. I think the alignment should have been done on North Dakota Avenue and should run up 3rd Street then, which is a much lower stressful area. And then you can make that connection westward up to 4th Street much easier without having to deal with any of the headaches on Aspen, without having to create any of this infrastructure you're building on Blair. You know, and I appreciate there's good intent here. I don't want to discount that. Everything is great in terms of the intent. I just think that if the overall intent of this project is safe and low stress cycling and running for users, then this plan does not achieve that. I think this plan achieves fast and efficient speed. So I just want to make that comment. Thanks very much for listening.
Just thank everyone for attending this event, and if any more questions, or we just end it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good one.
Bye.
Good night.